Great speech last night. Peter King was there for Sports Writer of the Year. I won Sportscaster of the Year. Mitch Albom into the Hall of Fame for sports writing in general, did Tuesdays with Maury. And then Dickie B closed out the night as he went into the Broadcasting Hall of Fame in Salisbury, North Carolina. Great seeing you last night, Dick, and your family and your wife. It was a nice trip down memory lane.
Well, it really was great seeing you, Dan. Certainly, we miss you at ESPN, but you're doing a super job as I expected, obviously. And bottom line is you're a pro, what you do. Had a lot of fun last night, meeting a lot of quality people, and to be able to share the stage with people like yourself and Mitch Albom and Peter King was certainly an honor for me.
What stood out from your speech, and it was a great speech, is that you almost passed on working or almost quit ESPN in the early years. I was surprised to hear, I did not know that story, that you nearly said, look, I'm not going to do this. Tell the audience why.
Well, Dan, I was really going through a tough time. As I said last night, I had not shared that. I shared it with Steve Anderson, who you know really well and was one of my bosses. But the bottom line was, early in my career, I used to wear these thick glasses, and my eye used to drift. I had no control. I was blind in my left eye, and still blind in it, but my eye used to drift. I could never look anybody straight in the eye. One day I came out of our studio, which you're familiar as you worked there so often in 18 years, and I came out, and the receptionist said she was so angry. And I said, what are you angry about? And she said, well, this guy keeps calling up saying, get that guy off the air. You can't look at him. His eyes going here. You don't know where he's looking. And it really was like a knife that went through me, as I shared last night in my speech. And I really came home, and I'll be honest with you, it was something I couldn't control. Like you could control your efforts as an announcer, your preparation and what you do. But that was something I could not control. And I talked with my wife, and I was emotional about it. And I said, look, I want to go back and coach, and I can't go on TV and make a mockery out of this, people laughing at me, ridiculing me. And fortunately for me, Steve Anderson, who was my boss, just said, hey, man, we didn't hire you to be basically a Tom Cruise or a Robert Redford. We hired you to be a basketball analyst. Don't let it bother you. But it did bother me. And I got a lucky break in that my wife, as I shared last night, went to see a pediatric ophthalmologist with my girls getting their eyes tested. And he's a basketball fan. And he said, hey, do you know Dick Vitale? She said, yeah, that's my husband. He said, I could straighten his eye out. Please have him come and see me. I'd love to help him. So I went in to see him. And then he gave me the news, and it was scary because, you got one eye. You got to really be protective. And he said, look, I have to operate on the good eye to correct the bad eye. And I didn't understand that. He said, I got to pull the muscle. He went all through that, and he said, the bottom muscle from the right eye, the left eye. And he said, there's always a danger of losing vision. That floored me. And then he said, you got to trust me. I have never, ever, ever lost vision in any patient I've ever operated on, youngsters, because he's a pediatric guy. And I just tell my wife, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to see TV. I got to go for this. And I went for it, and it turned out okay. But that was a down moment, as was when I had my throat situation. Only Dan Steer and Dan Schumann and a couple of guys really close to me knew I would go to games, Dan, and you want to be excited about doing a game. And I would spend the whole game worrying about what was going to come out of my mouth because I couldn't project like I wanted to project. I couldn't get out the words. And finally, Dr. Zeitel's a guy who's like the Michael Jordan of what he does, who's operated on so many famous people like Adele, and she gave him credit when she won her Grammys. He operated on me and told me that I had a serious problem that could be cancer. And fortunately for me, it was dysplasia, pre-cancer, not cancer. And it turned out great. But saying all that, it's been 34 incredible years. Incredible years.
You're 74. You seem timeless, and I hope you continue to do it for as long as you want. But you did say there's going to be that day, and we see this with athletes, that they retire too late. How will you know when it's time to stop doing this?
Dan, I know that day's going to come, and I know that day's going to be a tough day to deal with because I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love going to the arenas, love going to be with all the kids. But you're right, that day is going to come. I mean, you can't hold it back. But I think I'll know when I lose that energy to get up in the morning to want to go to a game. Right now I get goosebumps when I'm going down to Carolina or Duke or Kentucky to do a game, and I still have that same, I feel if I didn't look in the mirror and see what I really look like, I told you that last night, I feel like 25. I really do. And I said last night in my speech, I know I'll match my energy with any 25-year-old. And now I don't know what that's going to happen tomorrow, next day, because you can't hide the number. But the one good thing I'm really proud of, I go for my physicals, and when I went for my physical, the doctor had told me, he said, let me tell you, my man, he says, you got a body and like a 50-year-old. And I try to take care of myself. I work out regularly. So I don't know. Only the man upstairs is going to know that day. But I know one thing. My bosses aren't going to have to tell me. Dan, they've treated me like royalty there. They've told me from George Bodenheimer, who introduced me last night, and John Wildhack, who's now my boss. I've watched all these guys grow. They have told me from they've told me, John Skipper told me about 6 months ago, you have a job for life, man. You have a lifetime job. If you want to do it and you're able to do it, we want you. That's a great, great feeling.
Where would be the last game, ideal? You create the scenario. I've asked Jack Nicklaus if he could play one more round, where would it be? You as a broadcaster, any team, any scenario, what would it be?
Yeah, it would be very easy, Dan. I'd love to walk into Cameron Indoor Stadium, Carolina and Duke, number 1 and 2 in the nation, and sit at courtside and leave the arena. And I'd tell anybody that day, but that'd be my finale. Bye-bye. What a great run it's been. Maybe on the way out, kiss the floor and leave and just simply say adios, and it's been an incredible run. I mean, 12 Hall of Fames. Like I said last night, I'm loud. I talk a lot. I violate a lot of the rules of broadcasting. I got a body by rigatoni, but I must have done something right. And I think the one thing that's been good to me is I've lived by a doctrine that my mom and dad instilled in me. And they were beautiful people. They really were. They represented the fabric of what our country's about. Blue-collar, factory workers, uneducated, but always about love and always about family. Told me 2 things. I said it last night in my speech. One, never, ever believe in cat. And she'd always say, and my dad would say, Richie, be good to people, and people will be good to you. And I've tried to live that kind of life.
Before I let you go, will you do me a favor? I got rid of the BCS. Now I need you to get rid of the one and done. Can you do that before you retire?
I would love to get rid of it. I think it's the biggest joke. I think Andrew Wiggins, for example, going to Kansas, if he's good enough, Dan, he should be going to the NBA, a la LeBron and those guys. Forcing these kids, we absolutely make a mockery out of the term student athlete. It becomes a joke. I've tried to propose an idea. I really believe that we should have like baseball. If a kid wants to go and play pro ball, let him go. But once he steps on that college campus, he must commit to 3 years. He must commit to those 3 years like they do in baseball. And the only way that works, it works in baseball because Major League Baseball, the NCAA, work in a harmonious fashion. That is not happening in basketball.
I love you, and it was great to see your family, your daughters, your wife, and you're timeless. I hope you continue, and it was great seeing you last night.
Well, thank you, Dan. As I said last night, you look a hell of a lot better where it says ESPN on your jacket, buddy. I'll be your agent. Come on, I'll get you a big deal.
Thank you, Dick. Even you couldn't pull that off.
Thank you, Dan. Take care.
All right, Dick Vitale got into the Hall of Fame last night. But, you know what? And I give ESPN a lot of credit for doing this. And, one of the people responsible was John Walsh, who is the genius behind SportsCenter, what he wanted it to be. And Steve Bornstein was the genius of re-airing it in the morning. So you had a whole new generation that was brought up on SportsCenter. But what they decided was, could you write? Were you a broadcaster? Could you break stories? It wasn't about what you look like. And I applaud them for doing that. Not that people were ugly or it just wasn't the cookie cutter, a Ken doll or your Barbie doll. And I think they did a great job in the early stages of ESPN with SportsCenter of bringing in people who were there because they could do a job, not like that they look like they could do a job. And you wouldn't hire Dickie V. Here's a guy with, blind in one eye, a lazy eye, glasses, didn't look, didn't sound like you would think. Even Chris Berman with how he delivers, what he says, how he says. Stuart Scott, it's just different. And that was really, a brilliant aspect of what they did in the early going.